My name is Anila, and I was 30 years old when my family shattered in front of me. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, a family reunion where we would all come together and enjoy each other's company, the kind of gathering we had every year, where laughter echoed around the house and everyone shared stories of their lives. My parents were the ones who made sure we gathered, each year without fail. But little did I know, this reunion would be the one that changed everything. I had arrived early, as I always did, to help my mom with the preparations. The table was set with all the dishes we grew up eating: stuffed grape leaves, biryani, sweet kheer for dessert. The smell of spices filled the air, and for a moment it felt like home. But as soon as my siblings arrived, I noticed something was different. My brother, Saad, was being his usual self, loud, charming, and the life of the party. My sister Sarah was quiet but warm, always checking in on everyone. But there was something off about my dad. He was sitting in his usual spot at the head of the table, his eyes scanning the room, his face unreadable. We all sat down to eat, the chatter of the family starting to fill the air, but it felt distant somehow. I could sense that something was building. I tried to shake it off, focusing on my kids who were excited to see their cousins. But then it happened. My dad, who had always been the center of attention in our family, stood up and slammed his hand on the table. The room fell silent. "I'm proud of all my children," he started, his voice loud and commanding, "except the loser." The words hit me like a slap. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. Everyone else at the table shifted uncomfortably. I looked around at my siblings, trying to gauge their reactions, but no one spoke. The air felt thick. My heart raced. The loser? Who was he talking about? I knew he meant me. His eyes were fixed on me, his gaze cold. "Anila," he said, "you've done nothing with your life. Your brother has a successful business. Sarah's got her career going. But you? You've wasted your potential, sitting at home, doing nothing." My stomach dropped. I could feel the blood rushing to my face. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, but the words wouldn't come. I was caught, paralyzed by the weight of his words. "I've always been proud of my children who are making something of themselves," he continued, his voice growing colder with every word. "But you've always been the disappointment." I looked at my mom, hoping for some sign of support, some gesture that she didn't agree with him, but her face was down, avoiding my gaze. She was silent. No one said anything, no one defended me. My siblings looked away, uncomfortable, but not a word came from them either. I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't a family reunion. This wasn't a celebration of us all. This was just another moment where my dad made me feel like I didn't matter. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. The room was still, all eyes on me, but my father's words echoed in my ears. "You're a loser." Without saying a word, I turned and walked toward the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't care anymore. I had to leave. I couldn't be in that room, not after what he had said. The last thing I heard was my dad calling after me, but I didn't stop. I grabbed my purse and walked out into the cool evening air. I didn't look back. I walked away from the house, the weight of my dad's words hanging over me. "You're a loser." I couldn't escape the sting of those words. The words I had heard so many times before, but they never hit quite like this. I thought maybe, with age, things would change. Maybe I would finally be seen as something more than the disappointment in the family. But no, nothing had changed. I was still just Anila, the one who never measured up. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I walked aimlessly, trying to shake off the burning frustration that was slowly growing inside me. Why did it always have to be me? Why was I always the one left behind, the one overlooked? My siblings, Saad, always praised for his business success, and Sarah, constantly complimented for her career, were everything my father wanted, but not me. I could feel tears threatening to fall, but I refused to let them. I would not cry. Not for him. Not for a family who didn't understand me. I tried to breathe, to calm myself down, but everything inside me felt like it was unraveling. Eventually, my feet carried me to a nearby park. I sat on a bench, staring blankly at the trees. The world seemed to blur around me. I thought of my children back at the house, probably confused and wondering where I had gone. I wasn't going to let my father's words affect them, though. I would shield them from this toxicity. But the longer I sat there, the more I realized how much I had been holding back all these years, how much I had sacrificed just to keep the peace, how many dreams I had pushed aside for the sake of my family's approval. I had always been the good daughter, the one who did what was expected of her. But when was it my turn? When would I get to live my life for me? I could feel the anger building. My father had always seen me as less than, but it wasn't just him. It was the whole family. For years I had accepted the role of the failure, the one who didn't fit into their perfect mold. It was always my fault when things went wrong. I was always the one who had to make amends. I had played that role so many times that I didn't know how to escape it. I pulled out my phone, needing some kind of distraction. It was a text from my best friend Zainab. She had been my rock through everything. I didn't need to say much for her to understand. "Hey, I saw what happened," she texted. "How are you doing?" I didn't have to think long. I responded quickly. "I'm done, Zainab. I can't keep pretending everything's okay. My dad just called me a loser, and I've had enough. I don't care anymore." The text bubble popped up almost immediately. "You're not a loser, Anila. You never were. You've always been so strong, even when they didn't see it. I know you're hurt right now, but this is your moment. You deserve better." Her words hit me like a lifeline. I deserved better. Why had it taken me so long to see that? Why had I spent my life waiting for their approval when I had everything I needed to succeed on my own? The anger inside me shifted, no longer directed at myself, but at the people who had always put me down. I wasn't going to be their punching bag anymore. I wasn't going to be the person who always accepted less than what I deserved. I walked back to my car, my heart still pounding, but with a new sense of purpose. I didn't know what was coming next, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done being the loser. I was going to prove them all wrong. As I drove home, the weight of everything my father had said settled heavily on my chest. But this time, something inside me felt different. I wasn't angry at myself anymore. I was angry at them, my father, my family, for making me feel like I wasn't good enough for so long. It wasn't just the words he had said, it was the years of neglect, the constant feeling of being the one who wasn't important, the one who never measured up to their standards. I parked in front of my house and sat in my car for a few minutes, staring at the empty driveway. I couldn't let them do this to me anymore. I couldn't let them define who I was. I wasn't just their daughter anymore. I was me. I had a life to live, a future to build, and I wasn't going to spend another second chasing their approval. As I walked inside, my kids rushed to greet me. Their excited chatter filled the room, and for the first time that day I felt a sense of calm. This was my family now. They were the ones who needed my attention, my love, and my care. My parents had their own lives to live. I had my own family to focus on. But my mind kept drifting back to the reunion, to the words my father had said. I wasn't a loser. I knew that deep down. I had done so much on my own, built a life for myself and my children. I was strong, capable, and worthy of more than I had ever allowed myself to believe. I sat at the kitchen table, my mind spinning with ideas. What would it look like if I stopped trying to win their approval? What would it feel like if I started living for me instead of for them? For the first time, I realized I didn't need my father's validation. I didn't need his approval. I needed to believe in myself. That evening, after I tucked my kids into bed, I sat down and started writing. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to play the role of the loser anymore. I decided to start small. I began by looking into things I had always been passionate about, but had put on the back burner because I was too busy trying to fix everyone else's problems. I had dreams of starting my own business, of becoming something more. Why hadn't I ever allowed myself to go after them? I spent hours that night researching. The next morning, I enrolled in an online course to learn more about entrepreneurship. I set aside time every day to study and work on building my business. It wasn't going to happen overnight, but the seed was planted. I was no longer waiting for anyone's permission to succeed. My phone buzzed, and it was a message from Sarah. She had sent me a text earlier asking if we could talk. I wasn't sure what she wanted, but I knew that it was time to confront everything head-on. I couldn't avoid this any longer. I called her back. Her voice was softer than I expected, almost hesitant. "Anila, I just want to say I'm sorry for how things went down at the reunion. I didn't realize how much pressure you were under. I didn't know how Dad's words affected you until now." I was taken aback. Sarah was always the peacemaker in the family, always the one trying to keep the balance. I hadn't expected her to reach out. "It's okay," I said, my voice quiet. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep living for them, for everyone else. It's my turn now." There was a long pause before she spoke again. "I get it. You deserve more than that, Anila. You've always been so strong, and I think it's time you show yourself how strong you really are." For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of validation. Sarah was right. It was time for me to step up and become the person I was meant to be. Not for my parents, not for anyone else, but for me. We talked for a while longer, and though we didn't resolve everything, I felt like a weight had been lifted. I didn't need to fix everything at once. I didn't need to change my family. But I could change me. The next few weeks passed in a blur of action. I immersed myself in my work, focused on my children, and slowly but surely, I began building the life I had always dreamed of. I knew there would be bumps along the way, but for the first time in my life, I was taking control of my future. And then, one day, I got a message from my dad. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even an acknowledgement of what had happened at the reunion. It was simply a text, cold and businesslike. "You should come by the house. We need to talk." I didn't respond right away. I didn't know what to expect. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to walk into that house as the loser anymore. This time I was going to walk in as Anila, a woman who knew her worth, a woman who didn't need anyone else's approval to succeed. The message from my dad lingered on my phone screen, almost taunting me. "You should come by the house. We need to talk." I stared at it for a while, wondering what kind of conversation this would turn into. After everything that had happened, what could we possibly talk about? I had made my decision. I wasn't going back to being the one who silently took the blame, who stayed quiet just to keep the peace. Yet, some part of me still wanted to know what he had to say. I wasn't sure if it was because I hoped for an apology or simply because I wanted to see if he could understand the hurt he had caused, but deep down, I knew it wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. The next day, I drove to my parents' house. I hadn't been there since the reunion, and as I approached, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The house looked the same, but it felt different, like stepping into a world I no longer recognized. I knocked on the door, and when my mom answered, she gave me a tired smile, her eyes avoiding mine for a moment. "Anila," she said softly, stepping aside to let me in. I walked through the familiar hallway, past the pictures of us as kids, past the years of memories that once felt so comforting. But now it all felt heavy. I wasn't sure I belonged here anymore. My dad was sitting in his usual chair in the living room, his eyes lifting as I walked in. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me like he was waiting for me to speak. I stood there, taking in the moment, knowing that this conversation was long overdue. Finally, he broke the silence. "I guess you're wondering why I asked you to come." His voice was thick with something I couldn't quite place. Maybe guilt, maybe pride, maybe both. I crossed my arms, feeling the walls closing in on me, but I wasn't backing down this time. "I don't know, Dad. Maybe you want to tell me how wrong I am, how I'm still the disappointment in your eyes, or maybe you finally realize that I'm not your punching bag anymore." His eyes narrowed, and for a moment I saw the old familiar flicker of anger behind his gaze, But this time, it didn't scare me. "That's not it, Anila," he said, his voice quieter now, almost tired. "I realize I've said things I shouldn't have, but you need to understand. I push you because I want the best for you. I always have. I don't know how to show it sometimes." I looked at him, disbelief washing over me. "You call me a loser in front of everyone, and then you tell me you want the best for me? How do you think that makes me feel?" He looked down, his face softening slightly. "I know I've messed up, I was wrong, I see that now. But I've always tried to make you strong. You're my daughter. I wanted you to be more. I wanted you to be better than me." Something in his voice shifted, a hint of regret, maybe even sorrow. I had never heard my father speak like this before, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for him, but the years of pain didn't just disappear with a few words. I wasn't the same person anymore. "I don't need to be better than you," I said, my voice steady. "I just need to be me, and I need you to accept that. I've spent so many years trying to meet your expectations, and I've lost myself in the process." He didn't respond immediately, and for a few moments the silence between us was thick. My heart was racing, but I knew I had to stay strong. I had to say what I needed to say. "You've always treated me like I wasn't good enough. But the truth is, Dad, I'm enough. I don't need your approval to know that." His eyes searched mine, and for the first time, I saw something in him. Something vulnerable. Something human. Maybe he finally saw me. "I'm sorry, Anila," he whispered. "I've been hard on you. I've let my pride get in the way." I nodded, feeling a weight lift off me. It wasn't an apology I had been waiting for my whole life, but it was a start. I wasn't expecting everything to change overnight, but for the first time I could see a crack in the walls he had built around himself. "I'm not asking you to change," I said softly. "I just want to be treated like I matter. Like I'm not just the one who's supposed to clean up your messes or be the one to make everyone happy. I need to live my life on my terms now, Dad. And if that means stepping away from what I've known, then that's what I have to do." He didn't say anything for a while. The silence between us felt different now, not as heavy, but still uncertain. Finally, he sighed deeply. "I get it, Anila. I'll try. I can't promise everything will be perfect, but I'll try." I didn't know if things would ever be perfect between us. Maybe they wouldn't be, but I didn't need perfection. I needed respect. And for the first time, I felt like I was getting it. I stood up to leave, but before I could walk away, he spoke again. "Anila, I'm proud of you. In my own way, I always have been. I just didn't know how to show it." The words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I had craved his approval, his love. But in that moment, I realized I didn't need it anymore. I had my own path, my own future, and I was no longer waiting for anyone's approval to live it. I smiled softly, my heart lighter than it had been in years. "Thanks, Dad. That means more than you know." The days following my conversation with my dad were quiet. I didn't know what to expect. Part of me thought maybe things would go back to normal, that maybe I'd fall back into my old role, the good daughter who took care of everything. But another part of me knew that I couldn't go back to that. I had finally taken control of my own life, and I wasn't about to lose that again. Over the next few weeks, I focused on myself and my family. My kids were growing so fast, and I realized how much time I had spent not being fully present with them because I was too wrapped up in family drama. I started to take more time for myself, to pursue the things I'd always wanted to do but had pushed aside for the sake of keeping peace in my family. I began making small changes, taking courses on topics I was passionate about, going for walks by myself, finding ways to build a career that was mine and mine alone. I felt more alive than I had in years, and I felt proud of myself for finally stepping into my own. But as time went on, I still had moments of doubt. I would occasionally think about the family gatherings, about the tension in the air when we'd all be together, and wonder if it was possible to ever really move on from all that history. One evening, after I put the kids to bed, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. It was a simple message, but it was enough to catch my attention. Anila, I know things have been rocky, but I just wanted to let you know I'm proud of you. You've done more than I think any of us ever realized. I hope you know that. I sat there, staring at the message, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of warmth, a sense of validation. I had never heard those words from my family before, not in a way that felt real. And even though I had long given up on needing their approval, it still felt good to know that someone in the family saw me, recognized my struggles, and was proud of me. I typed back quickly, "Thank you, Sarah. It means a lot more than you know." A few days later, I had a small breakthrough with my dad. I went to visit him and we didn't talk about the past. We didn't bring up the reunion or the things he'd said. We just sat there, talking like we never had before, about everything and nothing. It wasn't perfect, but it felt real. I could tell he was trying, and that was all I needed. We never spoke again about the mortgage or the mistakes of the past, but in that silence, there was something different, a kind of peace that hadn't existed before. He wasn't going to be the father I had always dreamed of, and I wasn't going to be the daughter I used to be. But that was okay. We were finding a new way to exist together. I spent the following months working hard, but not just at my career, at my own emotional well-being too. I didn't let guilt weigh me down anymore. I didn't let my parents' expectations control my decisions. I knew that no matter what, I had to live for me. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. I learned to trust myself, to believe in my own worth, and to know that I was capable of creating a life on my own terms. The most important lesson I learned, though, was that I didn't need anyone's approval to be enough. And as I moved forward with my life, I did so knowing that no matter what had happened in the past, I was no longer the disappointment. I was Anila, and I was exactly who I was meant to be.